Good afternoon and welcome back to NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Wallops Island, Virginia. I'm NASA Public Affairs Officer Trent Parado. We're here for the second of two pre-launch briefings looking ahead to the Orbital 1 mission, which is launching tomorrow, Wednesday, January 8th at 1:32 p.m. from right here at Wallops. You heard in the previous hour a little bit about the science that's headed to the International Space Station aboard Orbital 1. So now we'll look ahead to the launch itself, hear a little bit about the readiness of both the station and the rocket and the range, and hopefully get a positive weather report. Again, you can find out more information about the Orbital 1 mission at www.nasa.gov/station. We have a number of distinguished guests joining us today. If you have any questions for them, you're watching online on NASA TV or streaming video, you can ask us your questions using the hashtag AskNASA on Twitter and Google+. Each of our presenters will give some brief remarks, and we'll follow with question and answer here in the audience and on the phone line. Here at Wallops, I have to my left Frank Culbertson, Orbital Sciences Executive Vice President. Next to Frank is Mike Pinkston, Senior Vice President and Antares Program Director of Orbital Sciences. And we have Sarah Daugherty, the Wallops Test Director. But first, we'll begin at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where we're joined by the International Space Station Deputy Program Manager, Dan Hartman. Go ahead, Dan.
So you got me? Yeah, thanks, Trent, and good afternoon. As most of you know, we had planned to be here for the Cygnus launch in the mid-December time period, but we had some issues on board with our external thermal control system that needed to be addressed, and so we conducted a couple of EVAs from mid-December through Christmas Eve and took care of those thermal control issues, and we really appreciate Orbital standing down in that mid-December time period so we could work through that. We then had to overcome the high beta pass, which we came out of just this week, actually today, and so that basically opened up the window for us for the launch of Cygnus. Following the two EVAs, we needed to do a lot of reintegration work with our interface heat exchangers to get our thermal loads back up to capability to reintegrate the Columbus module, the GEM module, and get our full research capacity back up in order. That was all successfully done. Following the R&R of the pump, it took about 2 or 3 days to integrate the system back to normal, and we've been in that state since. And like I said, we came through the high beta pass, and everything looks good. We did leave our old pump on the MSS system, and so in a subsequent EVA, we're going to have to go back out, relocate that old pump over to an ELC, and in the meantime, our engineers will figure out a way to potentially treat that old pump as a future spare. We're looking at ways to potentially add external valving to it to get away from that flow control valve issue that we had that gave us the initial problem. We conducted our ISS mission readiness review yesterday at the IMMT. I'm glad to say we have met all of our launch commit criteria. So from an ISS standpoint, we're good to go. We did our proximity checkouts. We've got the SSR mission, and a couple more onboard training with our crew members that'll take place between now and capture day. And so we'll get that into the timeline. And then we also plan to give our crew a couple days off between now and the critical activity of capturing and berthing of the Cygnus to Node 2 nadir. So our window will open up tomorrow, and I'm sure Frank will talk a lot more about the processing that's going on at the HIF and at the pad, as well as a weather report. We are really looking forward to this first orbital cargo mission. We're carrying about 1,500 kilograms of cargo, full load. We made no restrictions on what we placed on the manifest. If it was a critical need, we put it on there. We've got 400 or 500 kilograms of research flying, and so we're ready to get on with this mission. Looking forward to tomorrow afternoon. And then following that, we're posturing ourselves to hit our stride with all of our new commercial cargo vehicles in the 2014 time period. We've got about 5 or 6 slated for this year. Orb 1 will be the first. We'll get into some SpaceX and then basically kind of alternate back and forth between orbitals and SpaceX throughout the year. And so we're really looking to hit our stride in 2014 to meet our up mass needs. As far as a little bit of look ahead on the ISS, as you know, the Russians had a little bit of trouble with their EVA that they did after Christmas. They had some issues integrating a couple of their telescopes onto their segment. They brought those telescopes back in, And just as information, we're in discussions with them as far as carrying out a second EVA to put those back in place probably at the tail end of January. And I think we're targeting around the January 27th time period. We have 52P that'll undock on February 2nd, with then 54P arriving on February 5th. Following that, we'll have our SpaceX 3 mission, which is still slated for February 22nd. SpaceX had a very successful Falcon 1.1 launch yesterday, which paved the way for the February 22nd mission. So we're really looking forward to that. So to recap, we're really excited about the Orb 1 launch tomorrow, and we're ready to go. We're ready to capture it on Sunday. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Trent or Frank.
Thank you very much, Dan. Yeah, let's start with Frank Culbertson here at Wallops.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to Wallops. As you know, we were at the pad in December. A lot of us were actually on our way to Wallops when the decision was made to conduct the EVAs rather than continuing with the processing for the launch. I congratulate NASA on the success of those EVAs. The crew did a great job of replacing the pump very efficiently and quicker than they thought, but it's always a tough job to replace something that big. So we were happy to see that completed. It did give everybody a chance to take a little bit of time off over the holidays, and now we're back here again and out on the pad and getting ready to go. This is going to be a big week for spaceflight in the U.S., and I congratulate SpaceX on their successful launch yesterday. It's a big deal to be launching so many in 1 week. December was a very busy month. January is going to be busy, and I think you're going to see that the United States is going to continue to build up our launch rate and build up our capabilities to carry payloads, commercial satellites, and eventually humans into orbit. So keep an eye on what's going on, because you all probably will want to be a part of it someday, particularly the students that are watching. This will be the first of 3 contracted cargo delivery missions for us this year. We plan to also launch one in May and another in October if the schedule holds. And at the end of the year, we will have delivered approximately 5,500 kilograms of cargo to the space station commercially. This mission is going to carry 1,461 kilograms, not quite a full load, but pretty close. A lot of it was late load science, as Dan said, experiments, and you've been learning about those earlier today, many of you in the audience here. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of carrying that research to the space station and continuing to develop that facility as a laboratory and as an outpost in which we can conduct experiments, research, and learn more and more about living in space. It also, as we develop its capabilities, will be a stepping stone, at least figuratively, if not literally, to the rest of the solar system. We're on a tight schedule. Mike will tell you in a moment where we are in the processing, and we've got a little bit of margin left in the schedule, but not a lot. And we intend to continue to work through the night and bring the team in the morning to begin the countdown processing and launch at 1:32 tomorrow afternoon. We've got only a 5-minute window, so it's going to be a countdown that's going to have to go very smoothly for us. After launch, we will rendezvous in about approximately 3 days. 2.5 to 3 days. Well, actually, if we launch tomorrow, it'll be 3.5 days. And if we launch on Thursday, it'll be 2.5 days. So either way, we're going to arrive at the station on the 12th of January and deliver the cargo to the crew. Our rendezvous date depends on the phasing and where the station is when we launch, and how much we have to make up ground as we catch up with them. So it varies a little bit day to day, but we're trying to reduce the time as much as possible before arrival, so that the science arrives as fresh as possible. I want to emphasize before I hand it over to Mike again the importance of what we're doing. David Thompson and all of us at Orbital believe in developing the capability to fly payloads, spacecraft, and rockets into space on a commercial basis. We support government customers, private customers, and now we're supporting the International Space Station and its research. And we intend to continue growing that business, as do other companies. But what that means is that science will be more readily accessible to people on Earth, because they can participate in what's going on in space. It also means the space station will continue to grow in relevance and in productivity, which will allow us to have a future for human spaceflight in this country and a future for our children to go into space to explore. If we keep the space station going, we will have that future, so it's important that we do that. Space flight is hard. It will never really be easy until we have some new technology that allows us to levitate off the surface of the Earth. And I hear they're working on that, but we don't have it. At any rate, every countdown we do is difficult. And as Mike will... Did I run out of time? No. As Mike will point out, we've been dealing with challenges here. Space flight requires a lot of energy, a lot of people, a lot of complexity, and a lot of dedication. And that's what you see here, is the dedication of these teams here at Wallops, at the launch pad, and at Orbital to continue conducting space flight on a commercial basis and carry cargo to the International Space Station. Persistence is what really makes a difference in this. So with that, I want to introduce Mike Pinkston, who is a program manager for our Antares program. Very proud of what Mike has done. Successful test flight last year, a successful demo mission, and he's leading a great team who worked really hard through a very cold night last night to continue the processing. So, Mike?
All right, thanks. I think I have a few photos to show that will kind of talk you through some of the major milestones that got us to the point we're at today, getting ready for a launch tomorrow. So if we can bring up the photos. The first one is a shot. You'll see the Cygnus spacecraft in the foreground of our horizontal integration facility over on the island here at Wallops. In the background, you'll see the fully assembled Antares rocket being lifted off of its production dollies and over on the right to the transporter erector launcher Strongback, which is the big white structure you see that's used to erect the launch vehicle on the launch pad. This photo was obviously taken, back in the early December timeframe before the first rollout in mid-December. If we get the next one. This is a shot of the Cygnus mate operation. The Cygnus is rotated from its vertical position that you saw in the previous slide to a horizontal on a mating fixture, and then rolled up to the front of the Antares rocket. And our teams there are attaching it to the second stage of Antares. And on to the next one. This is a photo after that mate and a little couple of test operations. We go into the final cargo load. That's the team up on the stand there, loading the final cargo bags into the Cygnus spacecraft. After which we button the pressurized cargo module up for flight. Then next. After that, we slide the fairing over the top and encapsulate the payload, and that's really the final major step we accomplished prior to roll out to the pad. That takes us to the next one. This is a photo of that rollout operation. This was actually the first rollout in December. You can see it's at night, and that was 3 o'clock in the morning on December 17th. And you'll see the Antares rocket on the transporter erector on its way to the pad. The portable air conditioning unit behind it, keeping everything conditioned nice and cozy in all of the payload bays. And the next one is finally the erection of the rocket up onto the pad. So, where we are now, we actually went through that operation back in December, as we've already mentioned, before we stood down for the repairs on the space station. We were prepared to do that, to roll it back out Saturday. We ended up having to push that off a day to work a problem with the hydraulic system on the erector out at the pad. Got to roll out Sunday around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the team has been out there 24 hours around the clock since, getting the rocket connected to the pad, all the commodity lines installed, the thrust vector control system checked out through a very cold night last night, and then into today with final combined systems testing and the final closeouts and readying the rocket for launch. So pending the successful completion of our closeout activities today, we'll be ready to go for a launch tomorrow morning. or tomorrow. I guess it's 1:32, so tomorrow afternoon. The team will be in early. I think we're on station around 5:30 in the morning to get ready for a launch just after lunchtime. And with that, we'll hand it over to Sarah.
Thank you. So the Wallops launch range here is responsible for ensuring a safe flight of the vehicle and a clear path for the Antares to launch through. And so earlier today we had a launch readiness review. That was our final review before we proceed into those launch operations. If you go to my first graphic here, I'll talk about our Wallops launch range support. So we have a host of radars and telemetry antennas and command antennas, as well as many other types of instrumentation that will be supporting the launch here locally at Wallops, and then also at our downrange site in Bermuda. All of those instrumentation pieces have been tested, verified, configured, and validated, ready to support the launch operation tomorrow afternoon. My next item that I wanted to talk about is the safe flight that I mentioned earlier. We have also worked with the FAA, with the U.S. Navy VACAPES and the U.S. Coast Guard to put out our notices to airmen and notice to mariners for the launch operations tomorrow and throughout the week if we need that, to ensure that the ocean space and airspace is clear for launch operations. My next graphic, moving into the weather, which I think everyone is patiently waiting to see. So this is our weather forecast for tomorrow. Currently at launch time, we're predicting that it'll be mostly sunny. The winds will kind of be out of the southwest, very light for us being right off the Atlantic Ocean here. Temperature is still very chilly in the low 30s. And with all of that, our probability of a favorable launch conditions tomorrow are up at 95%. So tomorrow looks like a very good weather day for our launch operations here. And my last graphic that I have will just show, with the nice weather conditions and with the size of this rocket, the visibility of it during the day tomorrow. So you can see viewers all along the East Coast there will have a chance to catch a glimpse of it in the sky when we do launch tomorrow in the early afternoon. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the host.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Okay, let's take questions. We'll start here in the audience, and we'll go to the phone line. And as a reminder, if you're watching from home, you can use the hashtag AskNASA, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Let's start here in the middle.
Doug Money, team.
Go ahead,
Doug Money, TMC. Two questions for Frank. Number one, how many do-overs does NASA get for pausing a particular launch under contract? It's got to cost you some money to roll back the rocket back and forth each time.
How much money do we give to NASA, did you say?
No. How many times? All right. How many times within the contract does NASA get a do-over or a pause or a stop?
Because that's not specified in the contract. It's a fixed price contract, and so if we incur additional cost due to NASA changing requirements or changing schedule or whatever, then we would go back and negotiate with them what who would bear that cost. But it's not set a specific number of times in the contract.
Okay. Second question, can you contrast the cold weather we're having here with some of the other launch sites around the world? I mean, Florida might not be too happy with this type of weather, but at Baikonur, they're probably laughing at us because it's too warm.
Well, you said it. Baikonur gets even colder than this, and they still launch. Florida hasn't launched very often in cold weather, and it hasn't always gone well. So they're used to the temperate and hot temperatures for launching down there. We designed the rocket to operate down to at least 20 degrees. Fahrenheit, and so we feel comfortable that we can operate in these conditions. The extended sub-freezing temperatures are something we look at very carefully to make sure we understand what the impact of that is. And so we will look at the temperature profile over the 48 hours leading up to launch to make sure we're comfortable from an analysis standpoint with proceeding. But so far everything looks good, right,
so
Mike? Do you want to add to that?
No, I think the cold temperatures and the extended cold temperatures, definitely present some unique challenges to us as far as controlling the temperatures of critical components. But you'll note that the fairing, the aft bay, the intertank bay, were all of the critical components. Those are all conditioned. It's really a challenge of making sure the air conditioning systems can keep up with the weather and keep those components at their temperatures that are within their qualified design constraints. So far, for the most part, that's gone well. We're looking at a couple of things over the course of today, but expecting good results from that. And actually tomorrow will be a little less challenging day than today was. And if things go the way they're predicted to go, we're feeling pretty good that we've got control of the situation.
The other aspect we paid a lot of attention to was crew safety, ground crew safety, and last night they had pretty high winds and very low temperatures, so wind chill was a factor, and so we had to make sure that people really were prepared to operate in those conditions, and that we kept them warm, and that we didn't push them to a pace that was unrealistic or unreasonable in those conditions.
Ken Kramer.
Hi, Ken Kramer for Universe Today. A question for Frank and probably Mike. As you mentioned, it's been a big week for space flight. Mm-hmm. SpaceX just launched yesterday, and they're one of your biggest competitors. And I wonder, do you think you can compete with them on price? Are you going to be upgrading the Antares rocket in any way? Because you must be feeling a lot of heat from them. And you were looking to get, I know, new customers when we talked at the September launch. Can you give us an update on that? Thanks.
Sure. Yes, of course, they are one of the competitors, and they've been very successful in the last couple of years in developing new versions of their rocket. We also are working on new versions of our rocket, and in fact, by the fourth CRS mission, we will have an upgraded version that will fly at more payload. We're also looking at long range, what the configuration of the Antares will be, both from an engine standpoint and from upper stage standpoint. So we've got plans in work that it's not appropriate for me to talk too much about them, but we certainly are looking at that. And we are negotiating with people for other payloads besides the Cygnus spacecraft, and intend to fly more than just cargo out of Wallops here. So we do have big plans for it. And as I said, SpaceX should be congratulated on their launch. Another reason we're actually happy about that is because we built the spacecraft that flew on that, the TICOM 6, and so we were very happy to see that delivered to space, and it's performing very well. Orbital has a broad portfolio of business, and not just the launch operations that we conduct. We build a lot of spacecraft, we build national security systems, and we have lots of big plans for the future.
Tarek.
Thank you. Tarek Malik with Space.com. And I have a question for Mike. You mentioned the frigid temperatures at the pad, and I'm wondering, has that cold made you kind of scale down the number of folks you have out there? Do they all go out there with, hot chocolate and marshmallows, something like that? How have you been keeping them warm to maintain the focus you need for a launch, given the last couple of ones were kind of during more temperate times?
No marshmallows before ignition.
Yeah. Keep the marshmallows off the pad. It's as Frank said, it's a combination of things. We definitely are making sure they're outfitted with the right clothes. So, for example, last night we had a truck close by running with the heater going to make sure that the guys, they weren't required to be out on the pad 100% of the time. So when they weren't there, they were in a nice warm environment. We're also making sure we're doing frequent, crew shifts so that we can keep people cycling in and out of the cold and staying warm. So, I'd say it's presented a logistical challenge, but we've been able to successfully work through it. And I've, personally was out there yesterday, and the team was in good spirits, and I think we were successful in keeping everybody warm and safe, and no frostbite, and the team did a really good job managing that particular challenge.
Okay, let's take a few social media questions.
First question comes from Twitter user Tyler Waldrop. How large of a window do you have before you have to recycle the payload time-wise if you have to cancel tomorrow?
If we have to cancel tomorrow, we can probably go 2 more times with a good chance of preserving most of the science, if not all of it. If we go beyond that, we would have to talk to NASA about whether it was more critical to roll back and replace the payloads, which would take a couple of weeks probably, or whether we would just preclude conducting some of the experiments. We can launch quite a bit later than this week from an operations standpoint, and the spacecraft can loiter for a long time before we have to rendezvous with the station. But the science experiments are what are driving our schedule right now.
Next question comes from Twitter user Marcia Smith. Why do frigid temps require a launch delay? What specifically is affected, and what is the temperature threshold for launch?
Hi, Marcia. The temperatures affect a number of pieces of equipment, and I'll let Mike get a little more specific about that. But we have to pay a lot of attention to precipitation in conjunction with the low temperatures. If we have ice form around any of the structure, we have to worry about whether it's getting into crevices or interfaces and causing expansion, or whether it's going to cause a debris problem on the pad when we ignite the rocket, or cause hazardous operations for the people that are trying to work around the rocket. And Mike, I'm sure, wants to elaborate on that.
Well, maybe just a little bit. We have design constraints pretty much for every component on the vehicle that based on where it's been designed, analyzed, and tested to operate. As I mentioned previously, we've got environmental control systems that control the temperatures inside the critical cavities inside the rocket, and we've got instrumentation all over that allow us to see where those temperatures are relative to where those launch constraints are. So, to the specific question, I think the most critical one we're monitoring is a 20-degree ambient constraint that we've got that's based on some of our fairing separation components, and again, it's based on where those components were designed and tested. There are other constraints that are less about the ambient environment and more about how our environmental control systems are controlling the internal environment inside the fairing. But there's a lot of them, and we're looking at all of them.
Robert.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com with a question for Frank. I know you've named the spacecraft for Gordon Fullerton. Is his family here for the launch? And can you talk a little bit about why honor him in this way?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Robert. I should have mentioned that in my remarks. We did mention it at an earlier press conference, but yes, this one, in the tradition we established with the first demo mission, has been named in honor of C. Gordon Fullerton, Gordo, as many of us know him, who passed away within the last year. Gordo was a longtime astronaut, flew in space 3 times, and also was a test pilot at Dryden. And one of his tasks there was to fly the B-52 and drop a variety of launch vehicles and test vehicles off of the pylon on the bottom of that. The Pegasus rocket was Orbital's first commercial venture into launching payloads into space, and it was deployed from the B-52, and the pilot for that mission was Gordo. And so it's and many of our missions, and so we had a long-term relationship with Gordon, and he was very important to the company, and many people knew him well. So we knew him and Marie. Gordo was actually very happy when we transitioned from the B-52 to the L-1011, because then he didn't have to fly the Heavy. He could fly an F-18 chase plane and have a lot more fun. And he was a great pilot. We had his family visit us last November and exchanged a number of items with them, and also gave them a chance to see what Orbital does and why we were honoring their Gordo. They are not able to be here today, unfortunately, but I know that they're watching, and I want to send my best wishes to them and tell them we're going to take very good care of the SSC Gordon Fullerton.
So while we do a quick check for phone questions, do we have anything else from social media?
Twitter user AccuAstronomy asks, will the current S1 radiation storm and flare activity around sunspot 1944 cause issues for the launch tomorrow?
I don't think so.
Me either.
We do monitor that. We do monitor solar weather as one of our constraints, and at this point, we're not seeing anything that's violating our launch criteria.
Dr. Dan Hartman in Houston can probably answer that better for us. ISS monitors that too.
ISS, yeah, we monitor that almost. We get reports. In fact, it was part of our go no-go criteria yesterday at our IMMT. Radiation looks good right now. So far, we're not tracking any problems with that.
Here I was expecting a polar vortex question, and we get solar flare. Just never know what you're going to get. Any other questions here in the audience? Hands. Go ahead. Follow. Let's get you, Mike.
Hi, I just want to follow up on exactly what the scrub turnaround conditions are. Could you launch the next day? I think it depends somewhat on how close you get down to the countdown.
I think to keep it simple, if we were to scrub any time before T-minus 10 minutes, we should have an ability to turn around in 24 hours. Inside of 10 minutes, it can get dicey depending on how much of certain commodities we consume, but we have tankers on the standby, and there's still opportunity for 24-hour turnaround. It's just, it becomes dependent on actual events and what it takes to detank and what happens in that process as to whether we can actually get there or not. But before T-minus 10 minutes, we have every expectation that we'd be able to turn around the next day.
You do one more. We'll go to Tart.
Thank you. Tarek Malik again from space.com I think I have a follow-up for Frank. Last month, as we were leading up to this launch, I had a chance to speak with Rick Mastracchio on the space station. He mentioned he was really looking forward to the arrival of Cygnus because on top of all the great science and stuff, it was going to have some clothes and some goodies and maybe even some Christmas presents on board. I'm wondering if the orbital crew or you've had any instruction from NASA to refresh those presents, if there's extra things, New Year's stuff on board for this flight. Thanks.
Well, we haven't changed them out for Valentine's cards. No, there are some surprises for the crew on board, and we have a few traditional things. And then NASA actually had us load some fresh fruit for them in this last late load, which they'll much appreciate, I'm sure. But we didn't change out too much of the special things. We think they'll enjoy them anyway. Hey, I just got a tweet. This is from at Elvis in Space, and he asked, "Can you tell us a little bit more about the journey of Cygnus from the launch pad to the International Space Station?" Elvis is in charge of our operations, so I'm a little bit disturbed that he's asking this, but. But we do have a video that I think will show a little bit about our trip to space, and if we could roll that, if I didn't catch you too much by surprise. I was supposed to cue you when I spoke.
Mark, T-minus 5 minutes counting.
Range is green.
Check 378.
This is the video from our demo mission.
Go Antares, go Cygnus.
it was quite an exciting time to get this close and see the countdown go so smoothly. The engines ignited, we lifted off the pad majestically, as Dave Thompson says, and accelerate slowly at first, but then eventually gain a lot of speed. Great views from the rocket cam as we departed the eastern shore of Virginia. You can see Wallops Island beneath us there, and the other launch facilities that are there. It was a very smooth ride for Cygnus, and went pretty much right on the money. The Antares vehicle did exactly what we expected it to. Burns for about 4 minutes.
Three on the first stage.
On the first stage, and then another 5 minutes, I think, on stage 2 before they get to payload delivery. Once we were in orbit, we went through a number of, dealt with a few challenges actually, and then had to wait for the Soyuz to dock before we could approach. But once we did, it was a rock solid ride up the R-bar as we approached the station, and the crew prepared to grapple us. Our GNC team is Frank DeMauro in the back with his touchdown dance, and the team was very excited to see Cygnus finally grappled, and now it's NASA's problem, as somebody said. But the crew did a great job of, Luca and the folks did a great job of attaching it to the Node 2. They really wanted to get into it the first day, but finally the second day NASA let them open the hatch, and they were able to get inside and see the cargo and the few little gifts that we had, and the chocolate, of course, which is a big favorite, that we had provided for them. That's a picture of our team that worked on the Cygnus, development, integration and test, and their signatures that flew in space. And we may get that back down here on Earth someday and display it in the company. We hope it comes back. After 23 days, I think it was, on orbit, we were unberthed and released from the space station, and the next day re-entered the atmosphere above the Pacific, just north of New Zealand, and burned up on re-entry and disposed of the cargo as we were supposed to. So a very successful mission, and very proud of what the team has done. We expect something similar this time. We could be on orbit anywhere between 30 and 45 days this time, depending on the schedule, but we know that the crew and the program want to fill it up with as much disposal cargo as they can. So we're prepared to do that. Any other questions? I don't mean to take over your job.
Please, no. Sounds like that'll do it. That's a perfect note to end on. I'll look ahead to some of the things we can expect with launch tomorrow and the operations that'll take us through a Sunday birthing of the Orbital 1 mission. Again, you can find out more information and follow the mission at www.nasa.gov/station. Please help me thank our panelists for their time today. From Wallops, I'm Trent Parado. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow.